Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. John Maxwell said, "Motivation gets you going, but discipline keeps you growing." Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about what discipline is and what it's not, the dark side of discipline, why you need to raise your standards, building an effortless discipline system, and more. My guest is a husband to Michelle and a proud father to three. He's an entrepreneur, Wall Street Journal bestselling author, podcast host, and business coach renowned for helping entrepreneurs get the clarity, discipline, and strategies they need to increase their impact, income, and influence while working a lot less. Known as the world's most disciplined man, he has built multiple seven-figure businesses across various industries. He's been featured in major media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, GQ, Forbes, Inc., Men's Health, and Entrepreneur. Please welcome the owner of Early to Rise and the man who's helping all of us stop chasing, suffer less, and achieve more, Craig Ballantyne. Craig, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Jay. That was an amazing introduction. I appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to have a lot of fun.
I know we will. This is going to be a great conversation. I've been looking forward to this one from the time of early days of reading your books, consuming your content, and really trying to get into your world and into your psyche as best as I could. So I'm really excited for our audience to learn from you and be exposed to your greatness as well. So let's dive right in. I thought a good starting point would be maybe for you to share one of the things that you are most proud of about yourself.
Well, I am most proud about myself for giving up binge drinking and becoming the man that I needed to become to meet and marry my wife, Michelle.
Okay, we need to talk a bit more about that. And so let's tug on a few strings here.
Yeah,
so
totally.
That to me also ties into identity a bit. So I want to explore that more with you as you share more about being proud of those areas and what the person who you were and the person who you've become. So give us a snapshot, give us some context around where you started and then the evolution that you've been on and where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in Ontario, Canada. And in Ontario, Canada, you drink beer and play hockey, or play hockey and drink beer. It doesn't matter which order you do it in. That's what you do. And so I was a frat boy in college, and I drank too much, and I continued drinking too much after, which is, the main issue, the mistake that I made. If I go back in time, Jay, I would tell myself, quit drinking. That would have been a huge turning point for me, because it would have forced me to overcome my introverted tendencies, which I tend to have, and my social anxiety, which I used to have, and it would have forced me to improve on those earlier. And eventually I did, but man, I could have done it so much faster. So that held me back for a long time. My father was an alcoholic for 30 plus years. Alcohol killed him way too early. He died when he was only 69 years old, and in this day and age, that's far too early for anybody to die. And I think it emotionally stunted me and prevented me from being my best self. Now, along the way, at the same time as being this binge drinker, I was Dean's Honor List in school, getting scholarships, eventually writing for Men's Health magazine, building $1 million business before 30, all that sort of stuff. But man, I mean, just imagine how much further, how much faster I could have been if I had, pushed that aside earlier in my life.
Sure. So let's stay on your dad for a moment, if we could.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what, as you think back, for your father to pass at such a young age, obviously that's devastating in and of itself. But what was one of the most valuable lessons that you learned from your dad? It could have been maybe something that he shared with you, or just in watching him and learning from his actions.
Yeah, behaviors are caught, not taught, as they say. He told me a lot of things, but it was the behavior of hard work. He was a farmer. We grew up, and we lived on a farm, didn't have a lot of money. I remember his hands being cracked from the Canadian cold. Like, there were literal cracks in it, in his hands, but he had to have his hands exposed for some of the work that he was doing. And, he just worked really hard. He worked really hard in the summertime. He worked really hard with a hangover pretty much every single day. He got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He fed the cows, because cows don't take a day off, which is something I learned early and often. And also about the power of the morning to do your hardest work, which, as a farmer, feeding the cattle is the hardest and the most important thing you need to do. But that translated into how I attacked my day as both a college student and when I started my businesses, that I discovered that, as Mark Twain once said, if your job is to eat a frog, best thing to do is eat that frog first thing in the morning. If your job is to eat 2 frogs, best thing to do is eat that biggest frog first. And Jay, I don't know about you, but we both see a lot of business owners, and we probably see a lot of business owners who aren't accomplishing what they want to do. And it's because they're not getting down to the brass tacks as soon as possible early in the day. And we all know what happens to our best intentions 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're in a trough of low energy from lunch. The kids get sick at school. Somebody else brings us an emergency, and that thing gets pushed off till tomorrow. But if you want to accomplish something important and great, you need to do it early in the day. And, that was a lesson that I learned through my father, not directly, indirectly, but it was very valuable.
Incredible. Now, what about, same question pertaining to your mother? You think about one of those key lessons that you've taken away that landed, that you still think about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my mother was a secretary at a factory, and so I don't think she earned more than $25,000 a year for, I don't know, maybe a little bit more in the 2000s when she retired. But what she did was she also worked very hard. So in the wintertime, she was at the kitchen table sewing our clothes until 8 o'clock at night. And in the summertime, she was in the garden. We had an enormous garden on the farm. And in the summertime, she was there until 8:30 at night. As long as the sun was up, she was out. And, canned a lot of our food and so on and so forth. And so she worked incredibly hard and was very thrifty. They were quite different in a lot of their foundational behaviors, but there was a lot of also similarities, and that was key. And she also taught me to be conservative with money, possibly to the point of it being a double-edged sword, where being too conservative with money, but she was at least getting me to start saving when I got my first job at age 12. For $2.85 an hour, digging ditches. She helped me save some of that money, and I used it later on to go to school.
Very interesting. So that moniker that you have, world's most disciplined man, how does that make you feel? So when you first heard that, what images did that bring to you? Did that stroke your ego? Is that something that, really screamed, yes, I'm something incredible? What was that like?
Yeah, I don't think incredible is the word that flashed through my mind. So the genesis of this is I owned multiple businesses about 15 years ago, and they were all online businesses, and they were all content-based businesses. And some of my friends who owned one business were like, wow, you're putting out content 2, 3, 4 businesses. I only put out content for one, and it's hard enough for one. You must be very productive. Therefore, the leap is in the logic from, if you're productive, you must be disciplined. So am I David Goggins running ultra marathons? No. Am I, Wim Hof? No. But I'm productive. And that's, to me, what did it stroke my ego? I wouldn't say it stroked my ego either, but it was nice to be recognized as a productive person. But you can be productive and still not really actually accomplish things. You can be busy and not accomplish what really matters. So it was more, the thing that was one of my greatest accomplishments was writing a book, because I grew up as a bookworm. And even when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to write a book. So when I published that book, that was one of my greater accomplishments. The whole world's most disciplined man thing, gives me a chuckle, but I also find I do want to preempt it anytime I talk to like somebody who's got military service, I'm like, it's a bit of a joke. It's, I'm a civilian, because you're far more disciplined in some of the stuff that you do. So I don't take it too highly. It's just that people have called me that for that reason. And it's something that there is something to it, because by nature, I'm not a disciplined person, and I have a lot of faults just like most human beings, and I'm lazy in some areas. But what I did was I built systems that helped me accomplish things. And so I guess I might be the most systematized person that which translates into productivity, which then translates technically into discipline.
That's a great explanation. And thank you for the clarification on that. There was a time in my early corporate career where people called me a machine, because I was just I'm working and working, very disciplined, and my output was just absolutely on fire. The unfortunate piece to that, kind of the dark side on that, was that I destroyed relationships. I wasn't present for my family. My ego was incredibly inflated, and it just was a very, very difficult time. So on one side, I'm listening to it thinking, well, this kind of makes me feel good. But on the other side, I'm like, this is not aligned with who I am. And so that in itself was a process to work through. So I was just curious where your mindset was around that.
Well, I certainly, the dark side of discipline is what you experience and what I experience, because you put yourself in a prison of your own making when you become too rigid, when you become too focused on the outcome, and you kind of lose the plot. And for me, I guess I did take some of that, and I was like, okay, I'm called that, therefore I want to live up to that. And also, when you combine that with someone who's, not really comfortable in group settings, like with the social anxiety that I used to have, who's introverted by nature, which means, I could spend 4 days in a hotel room by myself, literally not leave except to exercise, and I'd be happy. I'd be totally fine with it, which, those things combined, therefore can also stunt you from some of the other things that you want to accomplish, like getting married, have a family, doing that sort of stuff. Or if you're already married and have a family and you have these things bestowed upon you, blessings and curses, they can really mess up your priorities, which is the dark side of discipline.
So I want to explore that a little further, but I'm curious, can you share with our audience how, whether it was putting systems in place, but how you were able to work through your own social anxiety, how to be able to show up the way that you wanted to, and also how you ultimately were able to break the drinking habit?
Yeah. So they all come down to the effortless discipline systems, which fortunately are very simple. And there's 3 components to it: elimination, preparation, and connection. And when you have those 3 components, whether you're addicted to your phone, whether you have a pornography problem, whether you're a binge drinker, I wouldn't say like an alcoholic, because like if you're a medically defined alcoholic and you're drinking like my father was, it's a little outside my scope of expertise. But if you watch too much Netflix, if you binge eat, like the effortless discipline systems will help you get rid of that. And any good habit that you want to take up, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's writing consistently to write a book, whatever, the effortless discipline systems do that. So it's elimination, preparation, connection. So on the elimination side for the binge drinking, you can imagine what this is. It's going to be pretty obvious. One, get the alcohol out of your house, eliminate it. What you're aiming to do in the elimination phase is make the bad habit as hard as possible to do. You want to put up as much friction in place of it. So then I avoided drinking environments. So instead of going to the Toronto Blue Jays game on the Saturday afternoon with my friends, I lived in Toronto at the time, I wasn't going there because I know what's going to happen when we go there. We're going to grab beers, and the next thing you know, it's going to be 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to be stumbling home from a bar. So I just didn't go to that. Now, eventually you'll be able to go back to those environments, but at first you have to remove yourself. And then finally, I had to remove and eliminate the toxic people who only existed in my life to drag me down into drinking. However, there were good people in my life who were also binge drinkers, and I didn't want to remove them completely from my life. So what then we did was we flipped to the preparation side, and we plan and prepare for alternative activities so that the relationship can stay strong, but it does not lead me into temptation. So Saturday morning, I would schedule time with my best friend of 30 plus years to go and do hiking. He can go to the baseball game in the afternoon, or he can go to the bachelor party or whatever that's happening in the evening, and I'm going to skip that. But I'm still going to plan and prepare an outing that serves us both that's non-drinking. So that's what you do. And then the final part of it is connection. And, the Jim Rohn quote is true. You average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you spend time with people who are drunks, you're going to end up a drunk. That's just how it's going to work. If everybody that you hang out with is overweight, you're going to gain some pounds. So you have to then go and flip it, because if everybody that you hang around with is wealthy and moral and ethical, and they're, happily married, and they're great parents to their children, well, you're probably going to be a little bit better in all those areas. So I started looking for people that were successful, were fun, and were non-drinkers. And there's millions of them out there. So now I just started spending my time with non-drinkers in non-drinking environments and doing better things. And so elimination, preparation, and connection, man, you can just flip it so fast. Sometimes things will take a little bit longer than you want, but you can really change your behaviors, your habits, just using that simple effortless discipline system.
That is so good. And I love that you can apply that same system really to anything in life that you're looking to change, to improve. And one of the things that you mentioned that I find very, very interesting, but also encouraging, is the fact that you can, if you have toxic people in your life, often we hear, well, you just need to remove toxic people, right? But you have found a way through your system to be able to change, to not necessarily remove toxic people. There may be some that you said goodbye to. Maybe you cut the cord.
If someone is truly toxic, then we remove them. But most people don't fall into truly toxic. But you're right. Like, the social media is like, oh, cut all your friends out of your life. Like, that's ridiculous.
Now, were any of those people that you had to change, or maybe just change the activities that you were doing, were any of those family members? And if so, is that different than a friend of 30 years or other friends?
Yeah, in that particular component, they were not. Now, okay. I do have to, I deal with, my family is wonderful. They are all wonderful people. They are not entrepreneurs. I don't even think any of my cousins even are entrepreneurs. They're high performers. Like, my sister is a very high performer in the corporate world, but she's not an entrepreneur. So they don't understand the entrepreneur side of me. And they don't understand a lot of things that I do, because I kind of operate in a different way. And, my mother's 4 brothers were all truck drivers, so they hauled cattle from Canada down to America. So, a lot of my cousins and I were like the first people to go to college in the family. So there's a difference in ideas, philosophies, politics, all sorts of things that have to be navigated, just like any, family. I was just starting to laugh because, you see all the memes at Thanksgiving and Christmas about, surviving another trip to the family, and, when somebody says this word or talks about this person, how the family's going to blow up. It doesn't have to be that way. Yes, I have severely, extremely different opinions about how things should operate compared to many of my close family members. But if you're wise, you can navigate those conversations, steer them into another direction. And my wife and I are both always thinking and planning and preparing in advance as well, because planning and preparing is really the secret of genius behind anything. And so even that is about family trips, which, right now some of my family is visiting, and we're going through this. And we're just like, every time it turns negative, turn it back to positive. And there are things that we share commonalities about. All my family members love my kids. And so therefore, if something starts going down the road about politics, let's get it back to talking about the kids. And if that somehow leads back to, something else about, schooling and education, and where there's differences, turn it back to, gardening. Gardening is another thing that brings our family together. Cooking, like, whatever it is, you can control this. And I understand that there's a lot of, that there can be tensions, but we can control it quite a bit. So I will say, in general, there's not much difference between the family and friends thing. Although with the friends is that if someone's truly toxic, you can generally cut them out. But if you have a truly toxic family member, unless everybody's on board, you're likely to have to deal with them. But you have to come up with a plan to deal with them in a way that's going to be positive and serve everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way that you share that, and I love the planning and preparation, even when it comes to family and having conversations and those dynamics, because not only does it happen, obviously, with family, but it also happens in a work environment. It can happen with clients. It can happen with friends. It can happen anywhere. But if we have the tools and strategies to be able to redirect, to be able to turn the conversation to something positive, because obviously today, and this is not unlike other areas throughout or other times throughout history, but we are certainly in a very challenging political climate, and it just seems like social media amplifies that. It most definitely does, and we can get pulled into the rabbit hole. And if we look to take a positive approach and maybe shift the conversation, or just try to listen to understand, right? Pause before we respond, pause before we type a response. And not every comment or not every comment that's made to us requires a response.
It truly does. And it's something that even I'm still learning. And, it's pick your battles, right? And there just doesn't need to be a battle in most cases. It'd be like, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then move on. And again, it's like, if you haven't thought about this and you don't go into the situation with intention and kind of like plan A, plan B, and plan C, then that's when you're going to be more likely to react and give your opinion, which doesn't serve the situation. But if you plan and prepare in advance, go, listen, I know these are the hot buttons. If they say this, it's generally most people are predictable. They're going to talk about this. If this comes up, here's where I'm going to take it. If this comes up, here's where I'm going to take it. And if this comes up, here's where I'm going to take it. And if things start to get a little hot, then I'm going to go, you're right, and I'm just going to move on, because some battles are not worth it. So that's the way to look at those things, and you can come out as that person who really can ebb and flow into all types of gatherings. And just be an empathetic listener, and ask. You can come up with you can be a very skilled question asker, as you are as a podcast host, which helps you in these situations. But anybody can learn how to ask the right questions, which guide the conversation in a way where people actually benefit from it.
Absolutely, so very true. All right, so share with us what discipline is and what it's not, based on your own experience, based on what you've learned. And obviously this becomes certainly instrumental to your book, The Dark Side of Discipline, which, by the way, my friends that are watching and listening right now, we're going to provide a link in the show notes to purchase a copy of this book. We're going to talk about some specifics in the book, which we've already addressed some of them, but I'm going to encourage each and every one of you to go out and buy a copy of this, because clearly we can't get to everything today, but we want to make sure that there's enough information that's shared with you that is insightful, something that you can take away, that you can implement today in your life and in your business, but then go out, get the specifics and details, and put this into practice. So, sorry for that little sidebar, but so Craig, the difference between, or what discipline is and what it's not.
Yeah, so I have been through all paths of discipline, from the person who exercises all the time to I don't swear, I don't drink. I've got rid of nearly all my vices, and I understand now that what really matters is this. And we came up with the ultimate definition of discipline, which we think is true. And the ultimate definition of discipline is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem, and everything else is just entertainment or a perverse form of procrastination. And so what that means is that everybody's got a biggest problem in life. Some people have a bigger problem than you. Some people have smaller problems than you, but everybody's got a biggest problem in their life. And if you have a big problem, you need to put a lot of energy and effort into solving it so that it's not a big problem. So it's not the thing that you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about. So it's not the thing that you wake up first thing in the morning and start thinking about, and it ruins your day. And what I noticed was a lot of people like to go and do other things instead of it. In fact, some people will do very hard things, whether it's cold plunging or whether it's working out twice a day or whether it's even doing an ultra marathon or a triathlon or a bodybuilding competition. People will do these things, which are very difficult things to do, at the expense of the hardest thing and most important thing in their life, such as having a difficult conversation with their spouse or business partner. The spouse or business partner, the conflict there is the level 10 problem. But it's scary. And most people know that, man, I don't know, it could get worse. And even if it gets better, it's not going to be resolved overnight. So I'm just going to procrastinate on it. I'm going to go and join a workout program where you work out twice a day. Like, it's insane what people will do, how hard people will work to avoid doing the real work. But that's really what it came down to in my observation of, clients. And I've been coaching people in the gym for my first part of my career as a personal trainer to online to business coaching, is people will go to exceptional lengths to avoid the real problems in their life.
I've done it more than once.
Yeah, and what I realize is that, again, it's a big problem, and so it's very scary. And even if you work really hard on the level 10 problem, do you even start to see results in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? A lot of people started a weight loss program who really, it's a level 10 problem, their health, their weight, and they don't see results in the first week. But if you go and start a YouTube channel, you can have your first YouTube video up in an hour, and you get the instant gratification. So a lot of people seek out the instant gratification of even difficult things because they know that the level 10 problem, man, it's tough to turn big ships around sometimes.
Absolutely. So I know from personal experience, and I'm just going to preface this by saying that I'm a work in progress, right? So I have this. Okay, so I feel like I have the self-awareness to know when I'm avoiding something, or if I just keep kicking that can down the field. And I have my own strategies and tools and systems in place today that help me out there, and many of those are because of you and because of the content that you've put out. So I thank you for that personally. So, but when I'm in that situation, so I'll give you an example, because you brought this up, but it applies to me. And as soon as you said it, I could put myself in that storyline. It's having the difficult conversation, whether it is with my spouse, whether it is with a child, whether it is with a board member, whatever it happens to be. Avoiding that conversation, that difficult conversation, doesn't make the problem go away. And I would look for everything to do other than having that conversation, just because I didn't want to do it. And so you finally get to the point where, that you're going to have to do something, right? Something has to change, because you can't keep sweeping it under the rug. And so I'd love for you to share with us, what are some of the tools that you would suggest? So if there is something that needs to be done, a level 10 problem that needs to be resolved, what are some steps that those that are watching and listening right now can take to actually take action on that and make sure their solution matches the level of the problem?
It's a great question. And so, believe it or not, I left this part out of the book, and I realized, like, this is kind of important. And so one huge mistake of the book is I left this out. But what you do is this. So first of all, let's find what the level 10 problem is. So, if you're listening to this and you're not driving, pull out a piece of paper and, hit pause and just write down, what is the level 10 problem in my life? And we can have level 10 problems in multiple areas. So what's the level 10 problem in my health? What's a level 10 problem in my finances? What's a level 10 problem in my business? What's a level 10 problem in my personal relationships? We got problems everywhere. Now, beside that, write down what level of effort you are putting into solving that problem. So let's say somebody listening to this has $30,000 worth of credit card debt. That's a level 10 problem. Okay, what are you actually doing? Well, like chipping away at it $100 a month. So you're putting like a level 3 effort into it. Now, here's what I left out of the book, Jay, is the next part should have been, okay, list 20 different action items, at least 10, maybe 20 different action items that you can take that would describe what would it look like if you were to put a level 10 effort into getting out of $30,000 worth of credit card debt. You don't have to do them all, but this is a brainstorming exercise where it's like, okay, I could cut up all my credit cards. I could stop all discretionary spending. I could, sell everything in my garage. I could, get a job, an extra job for 5 to 10 hours working Uber. And you go through and there's like 20 different things that would look like when if you were to then explain and say, these are all the things I'm doing to get out of credit card debt, someone would look at it and go, man, you're really putting a level 10 effort in, like you're going all out. So just figure, like everybody knows what it looks like to put a level 10. Then what we're going to do is, I'm a big fan of the 80-20 principle, because you might have 20 things down there, and the 80-20 principle states that 20% of your efforts generate 80% of your results. And I believe it in most cases. So if you look at the 20 things on there, what are the 4 things that if you did right now, they would have a massive impact on this $30,000 worth of credit card debt? Well, it's probably, stop all discretionary spending, get a side job, maybe even change your credit card to a lower rate of interest or something like that. And maybe you know somebody who can lend you money at 0% and you can pay them back, and you can show them how you pay them back, or you just sell everything in your garage, right? So okay, those things would move the needle. I could probably get it down to like $20,000 in the next 30 days if I did those things. Awesome. Go do those things. Now, here's the missing link, and we have already talked about this, but the missing link in people following through on this is the connection piece from what we talked about in the Effortless Discipline Systems. And when I say connection, I actually use a different word in the book, and the word that I use in the book is accountability. So accountability changed my life, because for years I had coaches and I would do about 80% of what they said, but I never took it to the next level until I finally met somebody who was a coach of mine, but a mentor and a business partner and all of these things. And I looked up to him as a big brother. And his name is Bedros Keuilian. He wrote a great book called Man Up. He's a very successful entrepreneur. And I realized that once I had connection and accountability, and this is what you need to write down, accountability to somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint. Accountability to somebody you deeply do not want to disappoint will make you move mountains in your life. Because let's say somebody listening to this does have a big brother and they have a very tight relationship, big sister, little brother, whatever. And you go, yeah, if I told my big brother that I was committed to losing 10 pounds in the next 60 days, I wouldn't want to let him down. And so therefore, when you have that in place, when you have that connection, all of a sudden your brain figures it out. Your brain makes you follow through. The second way to have this power of accountability is something that I've seen happen time and time again, is through a community of like-minded people. So if you're sitting there and saying, I just don't have this person that I deeply do not want to disappoint, and that's fair, maybe you don't. Hopefully you can find, and online works as well as in person, you can find a group of like-minded positive people, whether it's a community, like, Jay happened to have a school community of, followers of this podcast. That's where you would go. If not, there might be a Facebook group, you might be in an entrepreneurship group, whatever. But you standing up and saying, hey, in the next 60 days, I'm going to have that difficult, or the next 30 days, I'm going to have sit down, I'm going to have that difficult conversation with my business partner, and we're going to figure out, even if it takes a mediator, how to split this business up so that he goes his way and I go my way and we part ways as friends. I'm going to figure that out in the next 30 days. You stand up there and you say that, that's a burn the boats moment. And now, if you're a person of any level of integrity, you have to follow through. You have no choice, because nobody wants to be a hypocrite. And so you have the choice of have integrity or be a hypocrite, and nobody wants to be a hypocrite. So that connection, that's another form of accountability. That is what's missing. So it's identify your level 10 problem, rate what you're doing right now, then list all the things that will move you from where you are now to a level 10 out of 10 of attacking this problem. Then 80-20 it, choose the ones that are going to move the needle the biggest, so you focus on them first, and then go get accountability for following through. And man, you will change your life in ways that you can't even imagine.
Wow, this is so good. My friends, for all of you that are watching and listening right now, Craig had already said hit the pause button, right, to write down what is your level 10 problem, kind of list out all the things that you could do. I'm going to ask you to hit pause, rewind, and re-listen to this entire section, because what Craig just shared with you is truly a game changer. And I love the accountability piece to that. I mean, I personally have found through my own coaching business that accountability seems to be the biggest lever that affects someone's outcomes, affects their ability to truly transform themselves, to transform their business, if they're accountable, number one, to themselves, but then number two, to something that's bigger, someone that's bigger, someone that's important, or a community, as you said, right? Mm-hmm. It's remarkable the difference that it can make. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's very powerful. Absolutely. So what is a level 10 problem that you're addressing today, whether it's in your personal life, your professional life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just did a worksheet. We have a big mastermind in Miami next week, and what we do at our events is we help people get the clutter out of their head and get it down onto paper, and you can get clarity from that and move forward. So one of our worksheets is this level 10, exactly what I just listed out. At the top goes the level 10 problem, then your effort. Then there's one additional thing, which was, who do you need to help you on this? As Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy say, who, not how. Yeah. You can always accelerate your results. Then what does a level 10 effort look like? Then what's the 20%? What 80% results will you get from it? And then we have a little box for deadlines and action. I did mine because whenever I take people through worksheets, I always take them through my own. And my level 10 problem is taking my great marriage to an amazing level. It's from like a 9 out of 10 marriage level to an 11 out of 10. And it's a 9 because we have 3 kids under 3. And anybody who has parents, young kids, you know how demanding that can be. And it can impede what, it's definitely different operation when you got, 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid, 4 kid, compared to when you were newlyweds. So we are making sure that we're doing this exercise. We did this exercise together in advance of me showing my mastermind clients. And we wrote down, we probably had 12 things on the list. Everything from reread the 5 love languages, which I think is a tremendous book. People are easy to dismiss it and say, oh, it's cheesy, it doesn't work. It's absolutely it has saved marriages. I'm not a marriage counselor by any means, but my coaching clients, some of them have used it and said, yeah, totally changed my marriage. Absolutely. So there's that. We have daily date night dinners at our kitchen table while our kids are screaming around us. So we eat really early and our kids eat a little bit later, and we still have nannies taking care of our kids in the same room, right beside us. But we carve out 20 minutes to sit down and have dinner together each night, and then we take over the kids and the nannies leave, and then we feed the kids dinner. So being consistent with that. And then as someone has introverted tendencies, I need to communicate more with my wife, and we worked on a plan for how I can do that and also improve my listening ability, empathetic listening. I'm not naturally empathetic. My wife is the exact opposite. She is 100% empathetic, and she can't understand me and I can't understand her sometimes. So we've been working on this and made great improvements, but we're going to have a feedback session at the end of the dinner time. So there's that, and there's a couple more things that we have on the list. And so we've identified that this is how we go from a 9 out of 10 to an 11 out of 10 marriage by implementing these principles. And so I guess one mistake that I may have made, Jay, in all of this is by keep saying level 10 problem. And I don't mean to be negative, but most people do have problems. But you can flip it and say, what's my level 10 opportunity? And everybody who's a business owner, I hope that you have a level 10 opportunity in your business where there's like, man, I got to capitalize on this right now. That there may be some promotion, there may be some new product, there may be some new offer, there may be a new team member that's doing great. And that's your level 10 opportunity. And that situation likewise needs to get a level 10 effort. So we have more of a level 10 opportunity for our marriage as opposed to a level 10 problem, which I'm very grateful for. And that's what we're working on. And that's our game plan. And that's what we're doing.
Oh, that is so good. I love that. And I love the fact that you have figured out how to have date nights at the table with the kids around, even though there might be a nanny or two around. The kids are still there, and you're figuring
Sometimes
out
they jump
how to,
up on us, and it's
all
fun.
good. It's all good. It's part of life. But you've also recognized, right? You also have the self-awareness to know the areas. You've identified the gaps, the two of you together, right? You've identified the areas that you'd like to work on, that you know are going to improve that level, that quality of marriage, that juice of life, and you're both willing and committed, not just interested, but you're committed to doing the work. And I think that's phenomenal. And I think anytime we're in a relationship, whether it's a coaching relationship, a marriage relationship, a friendship relationship, if we're looking to improve, or if we're looking to make change, commitment and discipline, but commitment is an absolute must. Because if you're committed to doing the work and you hold each other accountable for doing it, then you will do it, right? It goes to what you were saying before about attaching that sense of urgency, if you will, or that purpose and why to something bigger than yourself. In your case, you gave the example of, was it Bedros?
Yeah,
and
Bedros.
Right. So you found someone that you looked up to, and you did not want to disappoint this individual. I mean, imagine in your marriage, you certainly don't want to disappoint your significant other, right? So I love that. So speak to the piece about what discipline is not, because you certainly talk about this in The Dark Side of Discipline. So share with us about that and where that can get us into trouble.
Yeah, so I think what people confuse is that they think that difficult things are discipline. So exercising hard, doing the ultramarathons, working out twice a day, that if something is a difficult physical task, therefore the person doing that is disciplined. And technically it is. But discipline is a task-specific characteristic. And the example that I'll use here is pretty extreme, because the mistake that people make is thinking that if I can work out twice a day, then I will be disciplined across my entire life. And that is not true. And the example is Tiger Woods. So in 2007, 2008, Tiger Woods was known as the world's most disciplined golfer. Everyone feared him because even though he was number one in the world, he was still golfing 12 hours a day on the range. Like, he was still out there that much. Now, at the same time as him being the world's most disciplined at something, at a very high level, the highest level possible, he was also the world's most undisciplined husband. He was cheating with 10, 20, 30 women, whatever, I forget what it was. So here is a man who at the same time was the world's most disciplined and most undisciplined inside the same human being. And so when somebody has a problem in their life and they think, well, I see these people doing these discipline challenges online, 100 push-ups in 100 days or something. I'm going to go and do this, and this is going to cure me. It's like getting an operation on your knee and thinking it's going to cure heart surgery or your heart disease. It's not. They're completely separate things. And this is where people are getting confused, and they're chasing these definitions of discipline that somebody else came up with. Why 100 push-ups in 100 days? Why not 120 push-ups in 120 days? Like, it's all ridiculous and just so random. But 26 miles for a marathon, it's all ridiculous and random. And we think that that's going to solve the problem. But what's really going to solve the problem, if you have an addiction to your phone, is not working out twice a day. It's you figuring out specific strategies for overcoming your use of the phone. And so discipline is not any particular activity. It is simply putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems, and everything else is just entertainment.
Okay. All right. I love that saying. I'm going to remember that one. So let's talk about, for a moment, the importance of standards and why we should be focused on raising our standards. And you can even use the example that you just gave of Tiger Woods as an example, right? Someone who's very disciplined with golf, but where do you think Tiger Woods' standards are when it comes to his standards for living, his standards for marriage, relationships, and other areas as well? So let's talk about standards, the importance of them, and why we should be focused on raising our standards.
Absolutely. I mean, clearly Tiger Woods did not have the right standards for his marriage and for his relationship with his wife. Now, I can't speak for him, but I do know here's how standards were important to me personally, and how it essentially it removes the need for discipline. So standards are far more powerful than discipline. And my example is this. I used to be a binge drinker. Then I moved from binge drinker to social drinker. Then I moved from social drinker to once a month I would have 1 or 2 drinks. And eventually I got to the point where it's like, even 1 or 2 drinks one night, I feel horrible the next day. I'm done. So I quit drinking in November of 2021 completely. So now my standard, my identity is that I'm a non-drinker, and my standards are that I do not consume alcohol. I'm not interested in alcohol. So when I go to an event, let's say that I go to an event with a social drinker. We're going to a business event, 7:00 at night. Everybody's drinking. I'm not drinking. My friend doesn't want to drink because he's got a 7 a.m. session the next day, and he doesn't want to be tired. He doesn't want to be hungover. He wants to have a great sleep. But he's a social drinker. His identity is that he's a social drinker. He doesn't have the standards of, I don't drink alcohol. And so, it starts off fine. The first 15 minutes, he's able to repel the people. And then after about 15 minutes, his discipline is being depleted, because discipline and willpower are depletable resources. And so after about 30 minutes now, he's also saying no to cheeseburgers that people keep bringing around. And, the peer pressure is just getting so much. And inside his head, it's this eternal battle. Oh, man, I don't want to have a drink, but, man, I want people to leave me alone. I kind of, do want to drink. I'm thirsty. Man, it'd be all right if I had a drink, but, I don't want to be tired in the morning. And it's like, how fatiguing is that to have that battle going on inside of your brain all the time? Whereas I'm standing there and I've lost zero energy to this because, oh, no, thank you. I don't want to drink. I'm not the type of person who consumes alcohol. I quit drinking years ago. That's my standard. And that's it. And I don't have to consume any energy. There's no decision fatigue on this. Whereas my friend, his entire brain power is going to, should I or shouldn't I have a drink? And that's why standards are so important. And we need to identify them and elevate ourselves to them in our core areas of life. So I personally don't have any standards around physical fitness. Like, I don't have to do a certain thing or achieve, I don't have to do a marathon a year, or I don't have to, have a certain standard in the gym. I just go and exercise, and I'm doing this for my health. But you might be really competitive around something fitness related, so you might have fitness standards. But I don't, because that's not that important to me. I have standards around being a father, being a husband, being a business owner, and some of my personal qualities. That's where my standards are. You are going to have different standards because you're a different person with different core values than I am. Freedom, you and I probably have the same core value of freedom. And so therefore, I'm going to have some standards around freedom and how I control my time. So everybody needs to do the self-reflection and introspection to figure themselves out and identify what identity it is that you want to achieve in life, and then what standards you want to have that then become your operating system. Just like a phone has an operating system that allows it to do incredible things. When you have standards that provide you an operating system where the right actions become automatic, you no longer need discipline. You don't even need systems anymore because you just operate this way and there's no other alternative to it. And when you're on that path, man, all of your energy goes from trying to figure out how to be this way to simply being this way, and your energy can go towards great stuff.
That's brilliant. So let me ask you just a clarifying question on the identity piece. So when you say, as an example, I'm not the kind of person who drinks, right? I gave up drinking years ago. When you're changing your identity, and you're looking at a better version of you, the person who you strive to become, is it just the words that you're changing and that you are saying, or do you actually create, for you as an example, did you create an identity around the person who doesn't consume alcohol? Right? Meaning that there was a visual component, there's the auditory component. This is what I say, but did you see that person? Because I'm trying to, I want to give some examples to everyone that's watching and listening right now of what that process is like.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there isn't only one path to doing this. So when I quit drinking, I did not visualize, a non-drinker in my mind. I simply adopted a rule. So I was a drinker, and then I decided I didn't want to be a drinker. I used the systems. I had to use the Effortless Discipline systems to build the confidence where I'd be like, here I'm going to do the planning and preparation. I'm going to get accountability. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be able to prove to myself that I can go out in a social environment and not drink. And I had to do that a bunch of times to build the confidence that then allowed me to shift my identity and elevate the standard. Now, that's not the only way to do it. You can actually change your behaviors overnight through the visualization process. So, for example, I had a friend who found out, my stance on pornography, that I'm not the type of person, if you're a family man, an honorable man, you do not consume pornography. That just doesn't fit with your character. And I had a friend who, wanted to be a family man, considered himself an honorable man. And he was like, man, when I heard that, I got to tell you, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to use pornography anymore. And I said, well, you're an honorable man, you're a family man. And it was overnight switch, because then he had the visualization in his mind of what that meant. So you can come to a stronger identity and higher standards through multiple different paths. For some of your bad habits that are so ingrained in you, you may need to first build effortless discipline systems, which prove that you can do the thing. For example, another example is people go around saying, I can never be on time. If you always say that, that's your identity, you'll never be on time. But if you say, oh man, I really want to change this, and for you in that situation, then it's effortless discipline systems. You're going to have alarms that go off 30 minutes, 15 minutes before you need to be on a Zoom or you need to be somewhere, so that these extreme systems help you prove to yourself, oh my gosh, I was on time. Oh my gosh, I was early. I can do this. And you may need to go through that process over and over and over again, depending on how bad your self-talk was. That might be an example where the systems come first, then the identity shifts, and then you can raise your standards. For some other people, there may be some things that they may have been working on for a while where you can change overnight. Like I quit swearing in 4 days when I decided I wanted to be a person, and this was a visualization. Because I have a friend in London, England, and I look up to him as a polite and courteous British gentleman. And I said, I want to be like him. He doesn't swear. And so therefore, I'm going to change my behavior and my identity to become a polite and courteous British gentleman without the accent. But I'm going to act like him. And by acting like him, I was able to shift that. And now I'm able to do everything without cursing or swearing. I curse and swear in my head all the time, but it doesn't come out of my mouth. And so that's a combination of both. There was like a couple of days where I had to put some systems in place, but then after 4 days, it was completely done. So again, there's multiple paths to doing this. And if you find like you can't do it overnight, then it's like, all right, let me build some systems here and make sure that I build the confidence to do it.
My friends, be prepared to do the work, but know that you can accomplish this. I mean, there's been so much great insights that have been shared in this conversation up to this point. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go out and purchase a copy of The Dark Side of Discipline. There's so much that you're going to learn about living, about business, about structure, about systems, etc. All the things that we've been talking about, but with greater details, the how-tos, how to systemize, etc. So we'll certainly provide the links there. So Craig, as we are wrapping up our conversation today, a couple of things. First, what are one or two bigger questions that you're contemplating today? Bigger questions. It could be about life, could be about business, but those things that you just really you ruminate on and you're thinking about very deeply.
Well, we think a lot about how we're going to homeschool our kids and what program and curriculum we're going to do and whether we're going to travel around or we're going to stay here in Vancouver. So we think about that a lot. So a lot of the big questions come up around how do I provide my children an environment in which they can flourish? That's the big thing on my mind these days.
Very good. That's excellent. All right. So before I ask my last question to you, I would love it if you would give all of us, including me, a challenge. What is one thing that you would challenge us to do starting immediately?
Oh, absolutely. It's do that level 10 exercise and, choose it for any area of your life. The 4 things I listed were the wealth, the health, business, and then your personal relationships. Do that. And then list out 10 things. And you can probably do that in about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You can get that. And you have clarity, like at least you know what to do. But half begun is half done, as Mary Poppins said.
That's so good. All right, great. So here's my final question to you. What is one of the most valuable, unexpected lessons that you learned from a client of yours? One of the most unexpected lessons that you learned?
Well, I get a lot of parenting advice, and I think the behaviors are caught, not taught pieces of advice. As a parent, they're true, but it also goes for everything that we do. So if you are a leader in your business, or, I'm a leader to business owners, man, I can preach to them all day long, but it's what they see me do that has a greater impact and influence on them. And when we see people change, it's not because I gave them a step-by-step, here are the 7 things to do. It's because they observed and, they did the visualization in their mind, I think, and they set the higher standard. And so the lesson to everybody is, if you want the world to be a certain way, if you want family members to be a certain way, if you want friends to be a certain way, then go out and live by extreme example. And the last thing I'll say on that, Jay, is if we go back to that binge drinking journey that I had, some of those friends that were binge drinkers with me that I made time to spend time with and didn't cut them out of my life because they weren't truly toxic, today they are healthier than I am. So they saw me living a healthy lifestyle. They saw me quit drinking, and today they're like through the roof. Like they don't drink, they cook all their meals, they like slow cooking, like they're just incredibly fit. But 25 years ago when I quit, or 20 years ago when I quit binge drinking, they were 30 pounds overweight. They were eating processed foods. But if you just lead by example, it's amazing how many people will come along on the ride.
Wow, that is so good. It kind of reminds me of that saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. Amazing. So, Craig, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. What a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate you being candid and exposing more of your story, sharing your insights, and I'm just grateful for you. Thank you so very much.
Happy to help.
Thank you. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And I do have a quick favor to ask. Would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? That helps us expand our reach and attract amazing guests, just like Craig Ballantyne. And by the way, while you're doing that, do the same thing with Craig's podcast. We'll provide a link to that in the show notes as well. I know he would appreciate that. And Craig gave you a great challenge, that level 10 challenge. I would love for you to share your takeaway and what your level challenge is. If you could share that in the comments, and I'll pass that information on to Craig as well. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And my friends, until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure that you go out immediately and pick up a copy of The Dark Side of Discipline. And please make sure that you are applying the lessons that you learn in this book. You will definitely see better outcomes. And we will see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.